Okay, I think I'm going to kick us off. Hello and official welcome to today's session. We are going to be talking about building and leveraging client advisory boards for success. I'm your host, Camille Fetter, the founder and CEO of TalentFoot. For those unfamiliar with us, we are an executive search and staffing firm that is focused on recruiting forward-thinking leaders that have a track record of high performance from the manager level to the C-suite. We recruit across sales, marketing, technology, accounting, finance, and operations. Our clients range from startups, lower mid-market to enterprise. And thank you all for including the information in the chat. We really want to make today as interactive as possible. So please don't be shy. There is a wealth of knowledge in the room. I believe 80% of our registrants are sitting at the C-suite today or at the board level. And we also do have some investors in the room. So I know that you'll not only learn a ton from our speakers, but certainly have an opportunity to learn from each other. So oftentimes among our C-suite network and followers, we're constantly asked around, what are the insights in the market? What are you seeing? What are the trends? What do I need to know? And this comes from executives who are excelling in their current roles, those that are building high-performing teams, and then, of course, those who are on the market looking to build their next move. And just over the last 8 weeks since we've kicked off 2025, we've been incredibly busy in go-to-market leadership roles. We're seeing a real uptick among investors, board members, and CEOs who are taking a serious look at their go-to-market strategies. They're not only really looking for talent that can really accelerate their next level of growth from a go-to-market perspective, but they're preparing for the fact that we're moving towards a cookieless future eventually, and we're being faced with an ever increasingly competitive landscape in business. And so these organizations are recognizing that it's time to build a client advisory board if they don't have one already. And many of these organizations, I'd say enterprise has done a fantastic job of building CABs, but now we're really seeing a trend of organizations really from startup to lower mid-market to upper mid-market build CABs. And they're building these advisory boards not only to shape the vision of the organization and, of course, the product and service roadmap, but they're recognizing one key thing, that they need to transform customers from mere buyers into valued thought partners. So today's session is essentially a crash course on CABs. You're going to learn how to build, manage, and leverage a CAB for ultimate success. Content like this really excites me because it not only propels the organizations that we serve as a search firm, but also the careers of the executives that we represent. So our format today is going to be a 45-minute overview of CABs, addressing questions that we have received in advance, and then we'll spend the last 15 minutes fielding questions from the audience. Please, again, don't be shy. We'd love to field any questions along the way. So either drop your questions in the chat as they're on your mind. Otherwise, we will ensure that we try to get to as many of your questions at the very end. We will also be sending out a quick survey after our time together to gather your feedback, along with a recording of the webinar and key takeaways as an exclusive resource on 10 creative ways to engage a client advisory board. You're really in for a treat today. I've really enjoyed getting to know our speakers as we've been preparing for our time together today. And I'm actually going to have our speakers introduce themselves. Diana, can you kick us off?
Sure. Thanks, Camille. And welcome, everyone. My name is Diana Buxton, and I'm a growth marketing executive who is determined, consistent, and willing to work for it. My career background is in the IT services and consulting space, where I have primarily focused on the financial services industry, and that's probably because I live and work in Manhattan, which is, really given me the advantage to work for the headquarters for the 5 firms that I've worked with over the last 25 years. As a growth marketer, I love being on the front lines with P&L owners, with sales, with the executive leadership, and our clients. And I have a very extensive background in supercharging ABM, which means account-based marketing, with putting together C-suite marketing and executive engagement thought leadership programs. And I've put a lot of these programs in place through the advisory boards that I have organized over the last 25 years. I have it all written up on my LinkedIn. So for more details on my background, please go to my LinkedIn and please also connect with me. And off to you, Stephanie.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Diana.
Yeah, thanks, Diana. Thanks, Camille. I'm glad to be here with such a powerful group. Quick background about me. The kind of current two hats that I wear are that I'm both the CEO of an apparel company. I would say it's a women's empowerment brand that's veiled as an apparel company. And then I also do private equity consulting with Makoto Collective. So by morning, I'm working with Makoto's portfolio companies to help grow and scale and ultimately sell. And then by afternoon, I am the company, I'm the client. So working on my own company to grow and scale and sell with a really wonderful team. Prior to these two roles, I spent 15 years working with global technology and consulting firms, including working with Diana, which is how we know each other. But really, we've just been working to understand and drive relationship building with clients. And as Diana talked about, really how that can kind of shape a company's strategy, increase revenue, really many benefits of CABS and how we think about working with clients. So that's the piece that brings me here today, and I'm really excited to talk about CABS. Camille?
Thank you, Stephanie. Wow, we've got two smart cookies who are highly accomplished and I know extremely passionate about this topic. So thank you both for being here. I'm excited to dive in. So question one, high level overview. What role do CABs play in today's business landscape? And why do leading companies see them as a competitive edge? Stephanie, I know you have some thoughts and opinions on this.
Yeah, thanks, Camille. This is a fun one. I think cabs play many roles, so there are kind of many benefits, many things you can get out of them. But I would say most prominently and simply put, it's a way to add value both to clients, which we're all trying to do, and as well as your own organization. So when you're a small company, everyone tends to know every client and what they're working on. You know the people, you know their initiatives. But as companies grow and scale, as you grow and scale, it really becomes harder for leadership to kind of stay connected and close to those clients. It's tricky because then you have leadership who's getting further from the client, but they're also setting the strategy. So talking about new products, new services, often making major decisions that are going to impact your clients. So CABS really solve some of that dilemma in connecting strategy to clients. I would say on the competitive advantage question, it seems like everyone is vying for your client's time. So those of you who can create a successful CAB program where your clients are choosing to spend their time with you, they're willing to share their thoughts and feedback to make you better. You get to tailor your products, your services, your other strategies. You get a lot of intel in a way that competitors might not because they don't have kind of the same market access. So again, everyone wants your client's time. We all get invited to so many events and speakers and activities. You really have to be thoughtful in curating a CAB so that it kind of adds the most value to both parties.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. We're actually going to launch a poll. Jenny, I believe you are going to launch a poll. What do you anticipate? Oh, I think we're changing the question. Here we go. What do you anticipate to be your biggest challenge with CABs? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Is it getting started, not knowing budgeting, resourcing, and really how to fortify the CAB? Is it getting the right members and or keeping members engaged? Is it structuring meetings effectively to get the most out of that time together? Or is it measuring impact and ROI to continue to get the organization's buy-in? We'd love to hear your thoughts and we will share the results.
Hmm.
Okay, wow, we've got a tie between budgeting and resourcing and getting the right members on board. So that's great. That's helpful. We will be covering that in detail, and we'll make sure that we share as much as we can. Okay, next question. How do cabs go beyond traditional client feedback to become a true driver of strategic business decisions? Diana?
Well, I can take that one. So all of my answers are going to come from, wearing the hat of a chief marketing officer, and a, chief marketing officer who wants to drive reputation, relationships, and revenue. So for me, and the companies that I've worked for, the real strategic driver and business decision with putting a cab together was to be able to put together a robust and diverse group of clients, because it's really all about creating stronger account relationships and having time with your clients outside the office and getting to know them, outside the work environment. And and having a cab gives you the opportunity to deepen specific C-suite or executive level relationships. You begin to understand the evolving needs and priorities of your clients. You can demonstrate your commitment to client success. And don't forget the art of networking. Bringing clients together for peer-to-peer networking is, one of the biggest benefits as well, because you're helping connect people together. So it's really about building trust and loyalty, which is reputation, creating superior client relationships. And, ideally, let's be honest, we want to grow pipeline and drive revenue with putting a cab in place.
Fantastic. Thank you, Diana. I've heard of a lot of go-to-market leaders that once they fortify the cab, the intention is not to get referred into other clients and organizations by way of their cab, but it just starts to happen organically because they know that the organization has a real vested interest in building a partnership that is of high value to the clients that they serve. Is that something that you see organically unfold among successful cabs?
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep. I mean, once you have that kind of trusted relationship and they understand what you can provide to them, it's kind of the perfect warm introduction to a new part of an organization.
Great. Wonderful. All right. How do you build and structure a cab? This is obviously a topic of interest to the audience. And I know it's a meaty one. So Stephanie, you want to kick us off on that? And then Diana, I'm sure you have thoughts to contribute.
Yeah, I'm happy to. This is a fun one because really the kind of creativity, the options are endless. I would just say, cabs come in many shapes and sizes, so it's important to know that they're not going to look exactly the same. So a larger company might be able to invest in, great location with experiential elements. I know Diana and her team have done that many times over the years with various sponsorships or other ways, or they can be done, more simply and on a tighter budget. I think as long as the kind of quality of the content is useful to people, there are many ways, and there's kind of, limitless what you can do with them. I've also seen people host cabs in unique spaces of a company. So examples of sort of what that might actually look like in practice. Maybe hosting at your own unique space or at a client. Certainly really cool to go to one of your clients' sites. You could host it at a kind of a wonderful resort type destination with amenities. Some companies have unique assets. So there are companies out there who own boats or planes or training facilities or museums. Lots of other kind of creative spaces where you can kind of open up some more creative thinking. There's really ample ideas of where one could be hosted to make it memorable. I think maybe just one other quick point here. The most important part, I think Diana and I are both going to say it again and again, the most important part of building a successful cab is just having kind of executive buy-in and support from the beginning. Really critical, and I know we'll talk about that. But Diana, what else would you add?
Yeah. Yes, I was going to reiterate that, how do you build and structure? You have to start with a strategic focus. You must have executive sponsorship, which I'm going to get into it a little bit when I talk about how to resource a CAB internally. Robust membership is crucial. Momentum and call to action. I used to say, like, am I the only one that wants to follow up, follow through? You need to have the call to action, and you need to be flexible. But as a marketer, I'm also about creating really memorable experiences for the clients when you bring them together. I think we'll talk about how often we would encourage you to get people together. But I've also worked at big public companies, all 5 firms I worked for. So I had a little bit of an advantage because, back when I was at Bearing Point for 6 years, I ran a Phil Mickelson golf program. So I've been able to create memorable experiences around golf, around F1. Interesting, we used to always ask the clients, where do you want to get together? And if it wasn't at one of our experiential events, everybody would say New York City. So there's just incredible experiences that you can create with celebrity chefs and food and just really cool things to do in New York. But that's after have gotten yourself going with the focus, the sponsorship, the membership, etc.
Excellent. I think we are going to launch another poll. That was all very helpful. And I know we're going to get into how do you select the members, right? What are their pedigrees? How do you fortify a diverse team? So no, audience, that is coming because I'm sure that's on your mind as it is mine. Okay, what do you believe is the most important factor when selecting CAB members? Industry experience, expertise, client loyalty, diversity of perspectives, or largest revenue source or highest growth potential? What is on everybody's minds? What do they believe is the most important factor? Let's see if we have a tie again. All right. The winner is industry expertise. This is actually, it's an interesting response and result here because it's something that we're often debating in executive search, right? We have a lot of organizations that will come to us and they'll say, we really want to disrupt our industry, but then they'll tell us we need to pull an executive from our industry. And oftentimes that's not really where and how we disrupt a category, right? Is pulling talent from the existing industry that is not disrupting anything. So yes, curious, Stephanie, Diana, do you have any reactions to that poll and that response?
Yeah, I think it was interesting that I think loyalty was the least. I think it was only 3% maybe around loyalty. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is interesting, and I think that's right because I think sometimes, to your point, Camille, you have long-standing relationships, but they're maybe not the most innovative. They could feel sort of stale or otherwise. And so I think always important to have new perspectives being added, new people kind of bringing fresh life to it. So yeah, great to see diversity of perspectives was high there.
Fantastic. Okay, so on that note, what is the most important criteria for selecting members to ensure diverse and valuable perspectives? Stephanie?
Yeah, happy to jump in. Well, it's a little bit of a consulting answer, but the criteria for membership should really be driven by what you're wanting to achieve. So to Diana's point, kind of setting out your strategy and what you want to achieve with it first. So if you're a technology company and you want to innovate around your technology, then you would choose kind of senior users or decision makers with a technology title who can give you feedback specific to the platform. If you're thinking about an entirely new strategy shift kind of in the marketplace and you want to understand trends and the direction of the industry, then you want decision makers at clients or other thought leaders who have a perspective on that, maybe some unique thinkers in the industry, people who can kind of look at the trends and give thoughts about where they think things are heading. A warning I would offer here is that people often think that they need to have CEOs of their clients in order to be valuable. And that's not necessarily the case. So kind of back to what are you wanting to achieve? You should really think of the kind of hands-on practical leaders at your clients who are going to help you get to your goals. Maybe that's a CEO, but maybe not. maybe just one other quick point. So while revenue of the client is a useful criteria, it doesn't have to be the primary one. So small companies can learn from big companies and vice versa. Revenue really shouldn't limit anyone. As long as the individual can contribute meaningfully, I think it's absolutely fine to mix revenue levels to some degree. You don't want tiny companies with massive companies, but sometimes those smaller companies are more nimble and creative, and they just think about the market differently and see opportunity differently than some of the big companies do. So just useful to hear multiple perspectives.
I think that's spot on. So you talk about the objectives, right? The objectives are first and foremost before you can even start to think about who's going to sit on the cab. What are some typical objectives that you both hear? I'm curious about the range of objectives, and it may just spark some ideas for our audience members.
Yeah, I can share maybe some that I've heard over the years, and then Diana, I know has set a
Yeah.
number of them internally, so can share as well. But I mean, I think one is if you have products or services, or you want to specifically kind of pulse check the market on maybe a shift that you're looking to make. Maybe there's sort of something happening in the regulatory environment where you want to understand kind of what's going to happen in your company and how people are going to be affected. So kind of being able, if you have sort of a specific kind of challenge you're wanting to solve, that helps kind of determine, what's the mission, what's the goal, who do we bring together then? Broadly, a number of different benefits from that, market research, relationship development, as you said earlier, kind of warm introductions, business development, and a number of different things that can come out of that. But those are just a few that come to mind. Diana, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about this later, but you need to have definite, clear metrics and KPIs up front. And again, wearing my marketing hat, our KPIs were revenue growth within accounts, were new opportunities generated, were strategic initiatives influenced. Yeah, those are kind of the three that come to mind.
Okay, great. Thank you both for sharing that. Okay, next question. How do you internally resource a cab? Who's in the room?
Okay, so I'm taking this one on because I've done this internally, and it is a lift. It's a lift because you do need a solid internal team. It doesn't need to be a full-time job, but you need a dedicated, solid internal team because you need people who can effectively recruit your members. You need to plan and facilitate a very productive meeting with a robust agenda. You need an outstanding moderator. You need to provide ongoing program management. So these are not full-time roles, but when you're setting out your strategy, these are the roles that I've identified from doing this before that you kind of need. So you need your executive sponsor. So that's the person who provides the vision. You need your program champion. So that's the person who is, overseeing recruiting, agenda development, meeting execution and planning. And back to, I'm going to always be saying the follow up and follow through with next steps. And the reason why is because when you're hosting these advisory boards, there's not 10 people from your firm there. So if you have 12 clients, there's, 2 of you there. So people need to make sure that the account women or men are following up on opportunities. You need a program manager. I think one of my former program managers is actually on this call. So she'll tell you that managing the day-to-day and internal communications and the internal communications is crucial. I mean, you can't be doing this in like a secret little box. And the program manager must have content knowledge as well. You need a team coordinator because the team coordinator is the one with all the spreadsheets, tracking and managing responses, keeping the team briefed on status and progress. And at any one moment, when the executive sponsor wants to have a an update, they're ready to provide that to him or her. You need to have an event logistics manager because yes, you can host these virtually. And you can do a combination of virtually and in person. But when you're doing them in person, with, senior executives and your biggest clients, you want a white glove experience. So you need somebody who knows how to secure a venue, how to do the F&B, entertainment, transportation. And kind of remember, this is not an event, right? This is a ongoing experience that you have with this group, and you need to create a memorable experience and create the right atmosphere and tone for the discussion. And since I'm CMO, I'm going to always say that you want your marketing leader involved. And me as a marketing leader, I also was the budget provider. We haven't brought up budget yet, but I provided the investment for all of these programs. So I absolutely had a seat at the table. And I was a peer to the executive sponsor and the program champion. And, and I was really due diligent with my program manager tracking all of the pipeline and revenue through these C-suite engagement programs. And then lastly, it goes without saying, you have to have your internal key internal stakeholders. So the key internal stakeholders are usually what we call in IT services is your client partners of the accounts or the sales people of those accounts because it's their clients. Well, it's not their clients, but it's the company's clients, but the clients that they're working on that you're inviting to be a part of your advisory board.
Thank you for that overview. So that's a lot of resources.
Yeah, I was gonna, sorry, Camille, if I could just add, maybe.
You might want to pare it back, Stephanie, but that was.
No, I think that's right. That those are all of the kind of responsibilities and items to think about. And I am representing small companies here as well, because that's the world I'm in. And I think sometimes all of those roles are held within two people. It's certainly possible to have your host, your strategy, a lot of that is one person. And then you have kind of an executor, program manager, marketing person, thinking about marketing, internal communications, et cetera. I think that can also be kind of a single person. To Diana's point, it's not necessarily a full-time job. It's just sort of a matter of how you scale up or down depending on the size of your company.
Okay, that's incredibly helpful.
Right, exactly.
So whether you're a $10 million business or a multi-billion-dollar business, you can really kind of create a program that's suitable for the organization's size and depth of resources that the organization has. So if we have a CEO or a C-suite member of a $10 million business with us today, they shouldn't be running for the hills thinking, oh, there's no way, we just don't have a resource for this. This is still possible for the lower mid-market and even the startup, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would say my experience was working with, everything from startup to your point. So firms with, fewer than 15 or 10 people, all the way through, the full Fortune 10. All the way to
you're always going to have people like me who are ambitious with their career, who raise their hand to do a special project on the weekends. So you're going to have those type of people. They're going to be first in line to want to help you with this.
Yeah.
So is it the program director? What's the name of the individual at the helm of the CAB internally?
Well, I called it the executive sponsor.
The executive sponsor.
That's usually the CEO. Or I was always doing this for financial services. So it's it's the financial services P&L owner who is the executive sponsor if you're at a larger company. If you're a small company, you absolutely want the CEO to be the sponsor.
Okay. How time intensive is it for that individual at the top in a given quarter, a given month? How many hours would you anticipate? And maybe it varies depending on the scale of the CAB and the size of the organization. If you were to guesstimate.
The lift is mostly at the beginning because you're recruiting your members. Once you've kicked off your first CAB, the 8 months of work leading up to that doesn't always continue after the first CAB, right?
Yeah.
Like the big lift is recruiting the members.
Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think if you have a, maybe a quarterly cadence or twice a year, or some if you do a really big event, maybe it's only once a year.
Mhm.
Really the lift is pretty light from that senior leader. Ideally, you've got a great kind of marketing director, program manager, someone under them who's doing all the heavy lifting.
Sure, sure. So, and as you're selecting the members, are you putting them through a screening and interview process to make sure that they're a good fit for the cab? And obviously, you have to be very sensitive if you're going to reject a client who's interested in being part of the cab. Any words of wisdom on that front?
Oh, we had it invite only, so that we didn't have many people coming to us. We went to them, but we very due diligently selected who we wanted to be a part of the cab. And you can't, yes, you can use this for business development, upselling within a client. You can't really invite people you don't know to an intimate advisory board situation.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you're not doing this with net new logos, you're really doing it with existing clients.
Okay, great. All right, we're going to launch another poll. Is everybody ready? What cadence of cab meetings do you think would be most valuable? Monthly, quarterly, biannually, annually, or depending on the goal of your cab? And I can't wait to hear what our panelists
Yeah.
say. Okay, looks like the winner is quarterly.
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah.
response? Followed by depends on the goal of your cab.
Yeah, I think I'd love to see that, people recognize the importance of touching base with their clients throughout the year. So I think that's right. I think, we typically have suggested kind of a quarterly cadence. And as Diana mentioned, that might be once in person, that's sort of a bigger event, a bigger investment, and maybe a few times throughout the year that are virtual. So still a useful touch point, still getting people together, still kind of keeping the love alive, but not having to sort of invest in a multi-day event as frequently.
Excellent. Diana, any thoughts on your mind or?
Yeah, quarterly's tough, right? I mean, we kept our advisory boards over the years very senior level executives. So just getting the save the date on the calendar, it's tough to do it quarterly. We aimed for every 4 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. All right, Sean has a question for us. What is the role of product management as a feedback mechanism to support the roadmap? Any thoughts here, ladies?
Yeah, so I think it's actually jumping into one of our next kind of key topical areas. One of the questions we were going to cover. It's
Yeah.
a
I,
good
I
question,
can
which
jump
is
into the question, and then if you want to weave it into your
in both.
answer. Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
fantastic.
in both. Yeah.
Fantastic. So what are the key components of designing a high impact cab agenda?
Yeah, so I'll answer that, and I'm going to answer the kind of product management question within this. So if you've been a part of, which I'm sure we all have, been a part of any sort of consulting project ever, it usually starts with a consultant interviewing stakeholders at your company to kind of get an understanding of what's going on. So it's like your doctor asking about your symptoms to help understand you, or like a 360 review where you get information to kind of get a full picture of someone before you go into conversation. So that step, while it's not unique or novel or new or proprietary to kind of ask people questions beforehand, it's really helpful to shape that conversation so you can understand, where the trends are. And again, just like your doctor is wanting to kind of understand where the pain is. This point where it connects to that product management question is that step should be true for all parties, all stakeholders involved. So making sure that you're not just asking clients for their thoughts on topics, but your senior leaders, your product people, anyone who's kind of interacting and involved with clients, should also be asked about what their key areas are so that you can kind of line up, the right questions, the right topics. You can line up case studies that are useful. You can bring in guest speakers. You can kind of have the right people that are relevant to shape that conversation. So I think the the step that's most often fumbled in that is the execution of it. The idea is not special, but the work to actually set the time and thoughtfully speak with clients, thoughtfully speak with stakeholders, talk to product management, talk to your marketing people, talk to client leaders. That's really where the kind of value is. So you need to have capable people who can execute that step to really make sure that you're kind of curating the right conversations and that generates the right outputs that can feed back into product management and some of those other areas.
Excellent. That makes a lot of sense. And I know, Diana, you had mentioned you really like to see the CMO in the room. Do you typically have the CRO or CGO in the room as well?
Well, you definitely have the P&L owner, but absolutely the CRO or I mean, they also could be one of the executive sponsors.
Yep. Okay, great. And the CEO is typically always in the room?
No, not at our firm, but you have to think I worked at 6 public firms. So we had a separate program, which was a CEO program, and the CEO always came to that program. So I ran I had lots of programs under my leadership. So the CEO, where it was CEOs in New York, he did come, but not usually to all the other things. Although the CEO was always at our experiential events as well.
Okay.
But back to the agenda, and Stephanie making the point about conversation, that it is an interactive conversation and discussion. You're not throwing up 10 pages of PowerPoints and presenting to them, right? Everybody has a voice at the table, and is able to talk, and it's always done under rules of no recording and not sharing what everybody else has said in the room.
Okay, great.
Chatham House rules.
And is the agenda typically provided a week or further?
Well, you're building the agenda with the client. So yeah, so they have input into that.
Great. Beautiful. And are there any, Keith asked, are there any big incentives that you've seen organizations offer to members as to entice them to invest their time in joining a CAB?
Yeah, it's I think it's an interesting question that we've often had that question. I think people at an extremely senior level are incented in very different ways. So their time is precious. And so I think one of the things we would always think about is it's not so much, you're not compensating them to join, but you're giving them access to others who are at that also senior level, other clients kind of in that kind of peer environment, and then making sure that it's sort of valuable both ways, I think is key. Of course, access to an F1 event or, some of the really wonderful things Diana's been able to do over the years is a great incentive for people to want to be there. Those are probably well attended, especially if you're an F1 fan. But I don't think it's entirely necessary to kind of think about compensation for people.
And now there's so much compliance seen with a client taking something from a vendor.
Yep.
We weren't ever, occasionally we would pay for hotel rooms, but we'd also always have to give the value. If I was going to do a dinner with Phil Mickelson and, knowing that, his speaker fee is $1 million, like you'd have to tell people, this is what it's costing to be there, because often they would have to just get it approved. Keeping in mind, I work mostly with payments companies and banks.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's an honor to be included, right? But that's just my personal opinion.
Absolutely. So you mentioned, obviously, this is not something we're compensating clients for. It's a real honor. What should companies think about in terms of investing in a CAB from a budgeting standpoint? And anything on that note, Diana, that's on your mind that you think our audience should be aware of?
Yeah, it's different from being on the board of a company, right? When you're on a board of a company, and because we also had boards at public companies, you do get paid to be on a corporate board. They do have to pay for your travel and hotel, and there's all the experiential around all that. But you know, how I got things funded is, you know, I'm providing the voice of the client for the people responsible for selling our services and solutions. So I always was vested in the people who were getting the value out of having the voice of the client, because it helped them engage and it made their job easier, that they're not always having to like give a sales pitch, right? They're getting people in the room, they're spending time with them outside the office. I mean, let's face it, people buy from people they like, so you get to know them. You create stronger relationships. You get to hear right from them about the strategies and the insights that they're thinking about in their job. They ask, you know, that's where you often uncover the new opportunities when so there's a lot of listening, right? When you're hosting one of these advisory boards, you're not you know, the ones doing all the talking. You want to be a really good listener because you can uncover new opportunities. And, you know, with a well-designed program, to keep the momentum going, you have a strong commitment to action. You hopefully, you know, are being able to go back to the business with business results. And, you know, I will say that, you know, this, you're not always seeing like a huge tick in revenue after session number one. You know, but we did see it after the first few years of meetings.
Fantastic.
So I didn't really address the budget question because it's you know, I mean, if you're going to start out with a cab, really your budget, when you're internally resourcing this, is the venue, right? And if you're doing an unbelievable dinner in New York, it's $12,000. If you're doing it in Dallas, it's going to be $6,000. So it's really,
or virtually, right? It's the cost of the resources.
right.
Time
Well,
and
yeah, I always did drive attendance with wine. So we would do really cool things like have a celebrity chef and do a little cooking lesson, or and everybody loved the wine tastings. So that stuff does cost money. Even if you're doing it virtually, you want to have a creative aspect to it.
That's great. Thank you, Diana. Before we jump into our last question, are there any examples in general or specific, depending on what you'd like to share, around where and when you've seen an organization take a major pivot, whether it was completely rehauling their product or solution or a new service offering? Any just general examples where you've seen, wow, this cab really was able to enable this organization to pivot their go-to-market strategy, service, or product offering, and hey, here were the results, top or bottom line, typically top line in this case.
Yeah, there's two ways to do the cab, right? And at the firms I worked at, we did them both ways, right? You'd have the industry together discussing, you know, global payments, or our CEO also had his corporate advisory board, where the clients were brought specifically in to learn about, you know, our new a new service or solution or program to get feedback. So I guess that goes back to your strategic focus. Why are you putting the cab in place to begin with? Is it to bring together your industry clients and to learn from them and talk about thought-provoking issues that they face with their job each day and how we can go in and help them? Or are you looking for your key clients to give you feedback on a even if you're rolling out a new leadership team, getting feedback on that?
Okay, great.
Yeah, maybe just a quick example I might share of a client who kind of leveraged their, you know, they already had their client advisory board together and had a lot of other strategic reasons for that. But there was a piece of regulation that was coming down the way that this client was really anticipating like this was going to sort of rock their world. And so they were setting up an entire kind of practice area that was going to be dedicated to responding to this. So looking for leaders, and they were prepared to help clients through this massive regulatory change. And once they sort of met with their advisory board and asked them and kind of asked how they were dealing with it, they realized, oh, actually, it's not as big of a deal as we think. And so they were able to kind of prevent what would have been a kind of a bit of a shift in their go-to-market in
Yeah.
just taking feedback from people.
Oh, that's great. So they not only realized that they didn't need to make the massive pivot that they thought, but it saved a ton of time,
Yes.
energy, and resources, right? That would have been
Yep.
wasted potentially.
Yep.
So
Right.
Yep.
excellent. Okay. So actually, let me trickle in. Oh, Natalie asked a question just in general about advisory boards. So when creating a general advisory board for the first time, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. Would you recommend an executive advisory board, a product advisory board, both, or something totally different? If you've never had an advisory board, do you start with a CAB, or is it one of these other advisory boards?
Yeah, I think for my thoughts on that are it's a bit of sort of what's going on in the organization.
Yeah.
Certainly helpful to start with kind of the more broad kind of client advisory board versus specific to products. But again, I mean, everything is being sort of reshaped with AI, and things are evolving really quickly. And so there might be a really specific kind of more product specific need that you have to start understanding what's going on in the market quickly. So it's a little bit of kind of what's going on in the organization and what's going on in the market to figure out. I think if you don't have a really specific product need, then great. I think you can start with a kind of a more broad-based general client advisory board. And then just like our client who had the kind of regulatory question to ask, you've already got kind of a group in place when things do come along. You want to ask them for feedback.
Okay, great. Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, if a company is just starting their first ever cab, what's the first step they should take to set themselves up for success?
Well, I don't, back to, um, well, at least I cared about it. I don't know if anybody else did, but I always wanted to have clear metrics and KPIs up front. And to have, the strategic focus, and you can't do this in a bubble, right? You need, you need to have an executive sponsor who's going to have your back.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know if this is like I mean, yes, you can be very entrepreneurial. Like I said, I used to volunteer to do these special projects all the time, but you can't do it without an executive sponsor who's going to help you manage all the communications with the internal stakeholders.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna double down on that. I know we're a little bit of a broken record, but hopefully it's motivating people to kind of see where they need to start, which is really just getting senior leadership on board. If you can't get your senior people excited about it, then there's not going to be a great kind of result from it. You're not actually going to change what's going on. I mean, even in massive publicly traded companies, Diana gave a couple of examples. Their CEOs are hosting and joining because they're saying that this is really important. It shows clients how committed you are to hearing their voice and incorporating their feedback. I mean, it's kind of like having the access to the answer key available to you before you take a test. Like it's there, your clients will give you the answer key, but you do have to take a few of those kind of thoughtful steps in place and kind of get your leadership team to understand why that's valuable before you can get your hands on it.
That's great. I love it. That's a great analogy. Are there
Yes.
any other general tips that come to either of your minds around just how the executives in the audience can get the buy-in of their CEOs, maybe their board members, that this is a good use of time, energy, and resources? Any other selling points that we can arm the audience with?
Yeah, well, I hope no one has to work too hard to get a CEO or senior leader to understand the importance of clients. So if that's your hurdle, then there's sort
Yeah.
of other challenges that are
Right
applying.
there.
So hopefully that's not the hurdle. But I think generally it's question you had asked Camille, which is demonstrating to them that it's not going to be a huge lift, that it is thoughtful, it's going to be organized, it's going to, they get to show up and dazzle and be smart in front of clients, and you're going to make it as easy as possible for them. I think that's really key to the buy-in.
Great. And then is there, and sharing maybe case studies, either within their industry, if they can get their hands on any case studies, or even outside their industry, have you found that to be helpful to just really start laying the foundation and fortifying the objectives for the business?
I would say I'd be curious to know what sort of public case studies
Yeah,
exist,
I was just gonna
because
say,
I
like,
don't know that people yeah, I don't know that people share it too widely, because it is a competitive advantage if we come full circle to the beginning. So I think while it needs to be communicated and spread, internally and communicated so that everyone knows what's going on within an organization, I don't know that there are a lot of people that have, taken that externally and kind of told others what their secret is.
yeah,
Maybe an opportunity for both of you, right?
yeah,
Leave client names out, but a library of case studies I think could be interesting.
yeah. Sharing across the organization, if you work, if you have a different industry practices, I always did that, right? To help. But you start with revenue growth and usually people listen.
Yeah.
That's right. All right. Rami has a question for us. How do you measure the ROI of a CAB, and what metrics do you recommend to prove its impact to stakeholders? Diana, obviously this is
Oh
something.
yeah, I just have the same three, right? It's and you have to, we had very interesting dashboards tracking all of this because it's hard to track, so you need somebody full-time tracking it. But the KPIs for me and our company at my last company was revenue growth within accounts, new opportunities generated, or strategic initiatives influenced. And measuring is key, but regularly communicating the impact of the program, getting on the all hands call, making sure your boss knows what you're doing, and they're communicating the impact. You can demonstrate by communicating. Obviously, not everybody communicates, but in marketing, you want to communicate from the inside out. So communicating the value to the stakeholders is the first step for building momentum and the ongoing success of the programs.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
would maybe, sorry, just one other thing I
Please.
might add is, again, some groups have different goals of what they're trying to bring out of them. And so I think Diana's are all spot on. And some others I've seen might be, generating X pieces of thought leadership, or,
Right.
generating different, research pieces, or, there might be something from kind of a content perspective where the goal is to be able to publish around something. And so using your client advisory board for that.
Right. To exactly, to launch a particular piece of thought leadership, and you're giving everybody an embargo inside scoop on what the company is about to put out. Yeah.
Great. Excellent. All right. Last question, ladies. What are you seeing done differently today and moving forward to modernize your CAB? What are you leaving on the cutting room floor from your 2024 thinking? What's on your mind? What are the modern trends that you're seeing, and any insights there?
Yeah, I can share that I think what I had seen is that it's almost a bit of going sort of back to basics. I think organizations have maybe tried to be a little too modern or a little too clever. I think there were, we were doing VR headset client advisory boards for a while.
Right.
We thought that might be the direction things were going, and then it was a little bit kind of clunky and it didn't go that direction. And I think at the end of the day, it's really just about connecting with your clients. It's the listening piece, and it's understanding what their challenges are and being able to respond to those. So, there may be tools or things that help us along the way to kind of get to that end. But I think at the end of the day, my guidance would just be, certainly great to be innovative and creative, but try not to get sort of too fancy and forget the whole purpose, which is to listen to your clients.
Yeah. And and T&E often is under the radar, that get together with your clients instead of having them all fly in somewhere. I mean, if you're in the payments industry, you're going to the American Banker Payments event in San Francisco next week. So gather everybody, if everybody's going to be in one place anyway, and the company's paying for it, offer to do something on site at a trade show, because it's unbelievable that I thought trade shows were going to go away forever, and now they're back.
Big time. Excellent. That's a great, efficient way to approach it. All right, that's it for our session today. Thank you to all of the members of the audience for joining us out of your very busy and hectic schedules. Thank you, Stephanie and Diana, for your wealth of knowledge. I am walking away with a lot more intel and insights as to how you build a cab, how do you leverage a cab, and I'm excited to continue to guide our go-to-market teams that we serve as they look to really capture market share and accelerate growth for their organizations. Thank you so much for this crash course, and we will be following up with all of those that were able to join us today with a recording, key takeaways, and again, an exclusive resource on 10 creative ways to engage your client advisory board. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your days.
Thanks all.
Thanks, ladies.